All right, it is 7 o'clock. I will call meeting of the Wetlands and Watercourse Agency and Conservation Commission to order. Sue, would you kindly sit for Marjorie tonight? Thank you. Approval of minutes. We have both the October 21st and the November 5th special meetings. Did anyone have any revisions to those? So none, I'll entertain a motion.
I'll move we accept the minutes. Second.
All in favor? Aye. Thank you. New applications for receipt and determination of significance. Application CC 25-29 of Michael Segan, applicant, Thomas and Molly Rutledge, owner, for a wetland permit to clear for a new driveway and associated grading and drainage to construct single-family home in the upland review area at Westledge Road, Lot 3, Assessor's Map A4, Block 203, Lot 3, Simsbury, Connecticut, or 160.
I have just a few slides to give you an overview of the presentation. The team is here for the applicant. This is for CC number 2529. It is Lot 3 on Westledge Road. You have the McLean Refuge to the north, and then Canton is to the west. It is for a single family home, but the upland review activities include the construction of a driveway and stormwater management basin in association with that home. It is a 70.15 acre vacant wooded lot. And in the upland review, impacts include 0.81 acres. There's no direct disturbance. And per the application, the closest disturbance is approximately 34 feet from the wetland soils. They also included a very robust soil and erosion control plan that was reviewed by our engineering staff. So this just is from their application. It provides kind of an overview of their two wetland pockets there. Wetland 2 and Wetland 1. Wetland 1 includes, from the soil scientist report, possible vernal pools. This is where the driveway is being constructed, as well as the stormwater basin. Wetland 2, there's going to be selective clear tree clearing. If you'll notice, for the Wetland 2, the upland review area is kind of in an odd shape. That was because there is topography, steep topography on this land. Our regulations say that when it's over a certain slope, you have to add 5 feet for every percentage point over that slope. So it brought that to the 200 mark right there. And that is all I have. The applicant can start their presentation.
Bill is getting set up. I'm Mike Segan with Richter and Segan. We are the landscape architects and land developers, or land planners really, on the project. With me is the Wetland from our office, who will be running the controls. We'll be providing an overview of the site design with a focus on the activities that are in the upland review regulated area, and also revegetating disturbed areas. We'll talk about that. Following me, Tom Lamaldi, the civil engineer, will talk about drainage and soil and erosion control methods. Eric will follow him. Eric will actually jump up in the middle of my presentation and talk about the wetlands in a little bit, and then we'll be at the very end of the project to talk about his evaluation of the wetlands in more depth, and also his impact analysis. And as Brittany said in the introduction, this application is for a wetland permit for activities in upland review area for really a driveway that accesses a residence. It was a somewhat of a unique parcel, but next, Bill. The site is located in the West Mountain section of both Canton and Simsbury. It's on Westledge Road, right across from High Ridge Road, that southern, where it loops around the southern portion is directly across from there. And the entrance to the project is approximately that point as well. The town line between Canton and Simsbury runs down the middle of the site. There's about, I would say, close to the actual parcel in Simsbury is 70 acres. The part of the parcel in Canton is about 26 acres. Total of 96 acres for what we call parcel one, which I'll explain shortly. The parcel in the overall property is undeveloped forest land, mostly upland, mixed forest, with some forested wetlands as well. The topography on the site is relatively gently flat and rolling to moderate to extremely steep. And it's really the steep slopes of topography that drive a lot of the overall development on parcel, which we'll talk about as we get into this. The only access to the parcel, including the Canton piece, is directly off of West Ledge Road. Next. This is the original, actually it's 168 acre parcel that was purchased by the Rutledges recently. It was made up, the property was made up of actually two individual parcels. Parcel one is a vast majority in area and includes most of the Simsbury portion and all of Canton. Parcel two was a smaller parcel in the area in the southwest corner of the overall property. As it turns out, the parcel two property line really made no practical sense. And as we got farther and farther into the project, it became apparent that most of the development was going to be on the middle southern half of the site. So next bill. So we basically did a property lot revision and moved that property line on the old parcel two up to where it's shown running. Let's see if I can running in this area. And all the proposed development you're going to see is in what we now call the revised parcel one. This has been set off as parcel two. There is no development proposed for parcel two. Parcel two is really not part of this application. It's just for parcel one. Next. So you can see here parcel one outlined in the blue. And it totals about 96 acres. 70 is in Simsbury and is the colored green that's here as well. We were in Canton last week and got approvals from the Wetland Commission. Our application, and was before them. And we have to go back to Canton to the Planning and Zoning Commission for a special permit for grading operations on the site. Next. Here is the overall master plan that shows all of parcel one, the illustrative site plan, including both the Simsbury portion and the Canton portion. It's for a single family house. It's located just below the ridge line on the Simsbury portion, and it includes two barns, a barn in Simsbury and also a barn, pasture and corral in Canton as well. The driveway comes off of West Ledge into the site along very steep slope, at the base of very steep slope, and just to the south of this wetland one, which we'll get into in a little more detail, into the site, past the camp barn, and it's constantly climbing up to get to the house area, and then the barn is beyond. The elevation change from the driveway entry to up in this area is over 120 feet. So you can see why the driveway is so circuitous. We're constantly climbing, and this section of driveway is just below the maximum gradient. Yeah, so it's a long climb, and that's why we're taking advantage of moving out. The very steep slope, very steeply sloping all along, if you've been up there, all along West Ledge Road. And that slope continues along here. And so the drive again comes up, and up the hillside. So that kind of explains the location of the drive, and I'll even get into that a little more closely. Next. This is an enlargement of the area showing the two wetlands on the property, and the upland review, the 100-foot upland review area around wetland 1. Before I get into the actual activity in the upland review area, I was going to turn it over to Aaron, who's going to talk a little bit about that. The two wetlands.
So yeah, we thought this was a good time just to jump in and give you a quick overview on the wetlands, and then I'll come back up and talk about some of the impact discussions. So we have wetland 1 and wetland 2.
Sorry, can you introduce yourself?
Sorry, Eric Davison, wildlife biologist, wetland scientist, soil scientist, Davison Environmental. We are out of Chester, Connecticut. So we have two wetlands. We detailed the hydrology, vegetation, soils, everything you'd want to know about the wetlands functions and values in the report that I submitted a few weeks back. But I just wanted to give you a brief overview before Mike comes back up. So wetland 1 is the largest wetland on the site. That's the wetland you see on the north side of the proposed driveway. That's this whole system here. The wetland flows from from south to north, and it eventually flows northwest, and it is a tributary of Cherry Brook. So it's a very large wetland system that continues onto the northern parcel that's owned by the same applicant property owner, but then also to the northwest where it wraps around and eventually reaches Cherry Brook. I'll talk about this in a little bit more detail later, but most of the wetland is what we classify as a hillside groundwater slope wetland, which means they're wetlands that occur on glacial till hillsides where the source of the water is groundwater discharge in the form of seepage. And that's what the majority of this wetland 1 consists of, primarily this southern portion that faces the proposed driveway. As you get into the interior of the wetland, we did identify some potential vernal pools where the topography levels off and continues off site to the north in this area, and I'll detail those a little bit more later. So that's wetland 1, again, drains northwest, and it's a tributary to Cherry Brook. Wetland 2 is down here to the south. It's a really interesting wetland in the sense that it's completely man-made, but its origins are colonial. And I did include a few photos of the wetland and its created feature in my report, photos 5 and 6, I think. But basically, it was dug. There is a stone-lined well at the tip of the wetland. So basically, they excavated out a hole in the ground, put in a stone-lined well for either water for a house or for livestock, and they intercepted the groundwater. And so now when the well comes up, it discharges down the slope, and it now is basically become a wetland over the several hundred years that it's been created. So the well is at the very western tip of the wetland, dug into the edge of a very steep hillside, and then the water discharges and forms a little watercourse that drains down and then along the road and eventually across the road. And then that wetland drains into a tributary of, I think it's Hop Brook, and that, which is over here, it actually drains south in a separate watershed. So again, wetland 2 discharges from an old well, drains down along the side of the road, flows along the road for a bit, then through a culvert into a large wetland system here that eventually feeds to Hop Brook, which goes south. Let Mike jump back up.
With that as background, I just wanted to, at this sort of even larger scale here, just discuss the driveway location. Because that's the major impact. Or activity, I should say, in the upland review area, again, of direct wetland impacts here on this project. It's about 46 feet, the driveway edge from the tip of the wetland. It's very southernmost tip. We have moved, and I'm going to show you some alternatives we considered later in my presentation, but we moved the driveway as close as we can, or as to the southern part into this slope. There's approximately a 16-foot cut into this slope, and it's so steep here. And I'll show you a drawing later that shows the contours more clearly. It's so steep here that if we move any further this way, we'll be chasing grade way up the slope and removing a lot more of the mature upland forest. That's why it's located here, and I'll even get into a little more discussion of it next to. Want to talk about the wetland activities at the 20 scale drawing, which is a little bit larger. We've got 11 sheets over this whole entire site. 8 are in Simsbury. I'm only going to talk about the 3 sheets that relate to the wetland activity in the upland review. Next. The first is an enlargement of the driveway entrance. Driveway comes in. You can see the 100-foot regulated area. I'm kind of tracing it here. So within that is clearing for the driveway and the grading operation related to the driveway. And then actually the revegetation of all disturbed areas. In this lower section, you're not going to see any lawn at all. It's all native plants and meadow, mostly native meadow. The restoration or revegetation plantings and all native plantings, shrub and tree along the edge here, kind of reforesting this really steeper slope of the uphill side. Outside the regulated area is basin number 1, where because of the clearing have to be done for this basin and the entrance drive, we are reforesting this area down by the road. We want to continue that same forest look that signifies the entire length of the project along West Ledge, and the plantings here are very dense, kind of mimicking the spacing in the natural forest area, and also have some native shrub underplantings as well right up by the road. Next. The next sheet up, you can see the upland review area kind of, you can see it here, right across here. So there's a little section of the driveway within the upland review of wetland number 1. And the grading related to that. There's also a bit of the basin for basin number 2, construction of the basin. The very, I think this is about 55 feet from the tip, the western tip of wetland number 1. And again here, very extensive buffer plantings that are added along the cleared forest edge. All the basin areas that have been cleared for drainage are all put back into meadow. And meadow mixes fit to different conditions, whether it's the basin bottom or just around the perimeter of the basin. And all these meadow mixes are native seed mixes, native plant material. We really like the idea that we're providing a very different natural habitat here with the meadow versus the site currently being 100% forested. And there's a lot of emphasis in these meadow areas of pollinator habitats. It's a big thing in our office now, and I don't think there's one project where we don't introduce some pollinator habitat, whether it's a residence or a campus or school project. Next bill. And then wetland number 2, that small wetland. That's a result of, I think, a well that was dug here back in the 1800s, I'm guessing. There's no, within the 100-foot area, there's no activity, but because this is a steep slope, your regulations require a 200-foot upland review area there. There's no clear cutting within this upland review area. The original clearing edge is up here for the meadow establishment, the stormwater basins, and the septic system that's below the house. It's right up in here. This area is marked along the top here for some selective clearing. For instance, if there's a tree here, a tree there, and then blocks the view off to the west, because that's one of the prime reasons for person's parcels are great views from the ridge line up here. Didn't want that opportunity. However, any selective tree removal in here, there'll be no grading or stump removal. They'll come flush to the ground. The ground vegetation will remain, and will be added a seed, meadow, seed, and shrub mix into this area. So maybe no trees cleared here, maybe a few. We just don't know at this point until you start opening up the views and seeing what you have to work with. Next. So that's the activity in the upland review areas, primarily for the driveway. This is the plant list for the lower driveway and all the upland review areas. That entire stretch coming in and winding up till you get to the house. All native plant material, mostly plant material that are found on the site, both the trees and shrubs. We've added some to add more diversity to the property, and especially into the naturalized areas. Seed mixes are all with the ones from the New England Wetland Nursery. Consists of all native plant material. There's a lot of pollinator plants in these 2 mixes. And some of these other mixes for the base and bottom, and the more shade portion on the north side of some of the clearings. You find that this mix works as good as anything. Along the roadway and the shoulders is a fescue mix. It'll be allowed to go meadow. Maybe it'll be mowed once or twice a year at most, just to keep the woods back from the driveway edge. So there's a little bit of a shoulder on the road. Next. This plan summarizes the activity in the upland review area, both for the driveway and potentially for some selective clearing. That one, I don't know if you can zero in, Bill, on the chart up above. There we go. Which we mentioned, project area is 70.15 acres. Total wetlands on the site for wetland 1 and 2 is 2.94 acres. Wetland 2 is only 0.03 acres. It's really small. Total wetlands activity 0. There's no direct impact or activity in the wetlands themselves. Upland review area for both wetlands is 6.63 acres. Total upland review activity area is 0.81 acres for both wetland areas. And the activities that are in the wetlands, I went over most of them. Sedimentation, erosion control, and site preparation, which Tom will talk about shortly. The clearing, selective clearing that will happen in those areas, the earthwork related to the driveway construction and the basins, the driveway construction itself, drainage, the electrical line that will be buried right on the shoulder of the driveway, stormwater management basins, again, Tom will talk about, and the native seeding and native plantings and that. That's we looked at some different options and we don't have any direct wetland impact. It did do a feasibility, an alternative approved feasibility analysis, but this plan shows some potential options that we looked at. First of all, we just take for granted that people, why is it here? Why can't the driveway be made down here? Well, that's straight up slope, and you could do a driveway like you see in San Francisco. I forget what the name of that driveway. It just literally goes in. I still don't think you meet the maximum slope requirements. So these steep slopes will fall all the way down to the very corner of the property. On the north side, you've got wetland number one that goes all the way to the property line here for parcel one. So that's not going to happen. So this really, the old logging road really made sense where it was located, how it wound up and around to the higher portions of the site. We looked at three options. We first positioned the driveway where the old logging road was, so it seemed to make sense. Looking more closely, it was very close to the wells. I think it was about 15 feet. Let's make sure I have that. That's cool. Yeah, mentioned. Exactly. And we then looked to move the entrance a little bit downhill, about I'd say down to the south about 80 feet or so, and with the blue, and that moved it about, at this point, I think it's about 20 feet. There we go. So the blue, it moved to 21 feet from the wetland edge. We met with staff, Brittany, and I think she made a comment is that as far away from that wetland as you can. And we went back and looked at it and moved it even further into this slope. You can see it led to a 16-foot cut, and that's about as far as I imagine we can go. You're just chasing grade. We'd be way back up here if we pushed it any further than there. But that got it. I think it's about 46 feet from here to the edge of the driveway. So those are the alternatives we looked at. And then from that point on, it pretty much follows the old logging road into the site up around the hillside. Next. So that it is the overview of the impacts in the upland review area. Before I turn it over to Tom, I just wanted to talk about some of the bigger issues on the overall site. As this commission says, this conservation commission as well. Next, the chart up on the left here, summarizing if you can go into that, the disturbance and revegetation site. The total area of disturbance is 17.8 acres, which essentially means that 75% of the site will remain as undisturbed forested area. Of the area that has been disturbed, 2.88 will remain as impervious, whether it's the driveway, the house, the structures, the parking, the pool area, etc. What's interesting, almost 15 acres will be either meadow, revegetation, restoration planting. So you're getting over of the 17.8 acres of clearing, over 84% of that will be revegetated. So only 4% is 4% of the overall site will remain as its purpose. I think that concludes my end, and we'll turn it over to Tom now to talk about it. Erosion. Oh.
Thanks, Mike.
Good evening. My name is Tom Grimaldi. I'm a principal engineer from Hillbrand Engineers and Surveyors. We have an office in Granby and Bristol. We're consulting professional engineers. The whole really biggest thing with this site, what we tried to do, and we were able to do it, we worked close with Adam and spoke to him about a few different ideas and how to address the storm drainage. And one of the main things was maintaining all the current watershed areas, not diverting any stormwater. So as I get into the storm drainage, I'll talk a little bit more about that, but that's kind of the reasoning behind the way the project evolved over time. This map that you see in front of you here is the clearing plan. This shows the clearing, the entire clearing on the entire site. As Mike said, the area to be cleared within Simsbury, 17.8 acres. That's the total area of disturbance as well. We thought it important to show erosion and sedimentation perimeter controls on this particular plan. Reason being is that the land clearers are not only going to go in and clear the land, but they're also going to provide the stumping and grubbing of the stumps and the roots, removal of the stumps and the roots. And at that point, the ground will be disturbed. So we're going to require that the land clearers install particular perimeter controls that are shown on this plan. Can you zoom in on this a little bit, Bill?
Which section?
Yeah, right at the beginning. We'll start at the entrance. So you'll see there's a construction entrance. So this is the old logging road that comes in here. The main driveway is going to be shifted over to bring it away from the inland wetlands. But initially, before we disturb anything in this area where it's going to require grading, we're going to allow them to use the access of the existing logging road, put a temporary construction entrance in here. They're going to have to install large sediment log perimeter controls and then perimeter controls along this area, access for discharge from the stormwater basin. Also, you'll notice as they move through the clearing, there's going to be sediment logs, and as they develop and start to clear and grind stumps and chip branches and tops, we're asking them to install sediment logs that are staked to the ground and berms that are made of wood chips and stump grindings that'll be directly in front of the sediment logs. Sediment logs are there just to kind of hold everything in place to make sure that nothing moves until it settles in. The berms themselves will be 6 foot wide and 3 foot high, and they'll be placed up against the sediment logs. If you could just move through a little bit, Bill, that would be great. So as we move through, as they clear each area for basin, so this is basin area number 2. As they clear this area, again, they'll install the perimeter controls all the way around. And we closed off the upper side of this just in case we get any flow from this area here to prevent it from actually getting in here and causing any more disturbance. And as we move up the road, you'll see that there's more of the same. This kind of gets into Canton. If you could bring me around to the top right here, Bill. So this is back at the top of the hill, the high point on the site. It's a little bit over 1,000 feet above sea level. There's perimeter controls all along here and throughout the house area. You'll see the heavy berm with the wood chips in here back by the sediment log, and then straw wattle check dams all the way through. And then same thing for this area here. This is going to be a 12-inch sediment log in here. And that kind of gets us to the point of the clearing. We can go to the next one, Bill. So once the clearing, stumping and grubbing is done, these perimeter controls will remain in place. We're doing erosion and sedimentation control in 3 phases. First phase is construction entrance, installing perimeter controls, as I just indicated with the land clears. We'll inform the town staff to come out to inspect those perimeter controls to make sure everything is installed according to our liking and the town's liking. And then the removal of the trees, stumping and grubbing. The second phase is what you're gonna see before you here. This is actually gets into the construction phase of the erosion and sedimentation control. These erosion and sedimentation control plans are actually coming first before the basin utility plans, because it's gonna require them to install the sediment traps, temporary sediment trenches and things like that during the construction. So the second phase actually has 9 sub-phases. And we set it up with sub-phases because I want to limit the amount of ground that's open on the site. And I would like to get areas topsoiled, seeded, stabilized, and get grass growing as soon as possible so we can limit the amount of open disturbance on the site. We don't want 17 acres of open ground. We want to close it up as soon as possible. So you'll see here, this is a high point in the driveway. So the first phase is going to be installing the construction entrance bottom this section of the driveway, installing the construction entrance. And then you'll see these are the berms that the land clearers put in. But just to the inside, right here, and that runs right in front of the berm, and here, there's driveway swale on the high side. That'll be utilized as a temporary sediment trench. So we'll capture sediment in that trench that has straw water check dams in it. That water will then come into a temporary sediment trap here. There's a high level overflow that goes to the temporary sediment trap, which is also the sediment forebay of this stormwater quality basin number 1. So once this is installed and the trench is installed, that allows us to control sediment and wet and dry, so with water and just the sediment load itself. And it allows us to split it up. So instead of concentrate all our sediment in 2 areas for this particular subphase, we're actually able to split it up and utilize these trenches. Now, the trench is a twofold thing. We need a trench for utilities. So we have to install the trench anyway. So we figured we'd have them install the trench first so that we could actually utilize that as temporary sediment feature for best management practice. And it also, when it's time to actually put the utilities in, all they do is go back and clean the silt out of the trench, remove it, and install utilities. This is stormwater management basin number 1. We have a detailed site-specific construction sequencing for each subphase on this site. And it talks about the installation of the driveway, taking the material, the unsuitable materials, topsoil, forest litter, and putting that right into the embankment on the low side of the driveway to isolate out the roadway until they can bring the proper material in to get it up to grade. So what we're doing is we're trying to create these borders and perimeters where untreated water will be able to get through. So the goal is to capture all this and keep it in there. As far as basins and things go, we'd like them to start at the outlets and work their way away from the upland review area limits, and then work into the basin, get the basin graded, get the embankments in, get it stabilized, blown, seeded before they actually move on too much farther for the next phase.
How long do you think that phase would take?
That's probably about a couple of weeks,
Okay.
maybe a week and a half to 2 weeks.
Okay. Okay.
It's gonna take a little bit to get the berms for the detention basins in. Cause we have impermeable cores in there that the town engineer would like to see. That doesn't let seepage come through the sides. So those have to be like kind of keyed into the existing grade and then built up as part of the berm and lifts. It's comprised of like a heavily silted material, so water can't permeate through it and seep. You'll notice as we move on, the next high point is here. And there's a low point here. So you'll see we go from high points to low points for each subphase. This year, again, very similar. It's going to be kind of repetitive. There's a temporary sediment trap here. Some of the water from the trench will come this way into this temporary sediment trap. Water from the high point as it sheet flows from so this road is crowned. So half of the road will drain to the north into these trenches and then into the temporary sediment trap. Nice thing about this is we'll get a lot of storage out of these trenches before the water actually gets to the temporary sediment trap. And the same thing on the high side. The swales that are going to be utilized during construction for water quality, vegetative waterways, water quality swales, those will be utilized as temporary sediment trenches. And then all the culverts that you see that go from the low points to the temporary sediment traps, those are all temporary culverts. So they'll be put in to convey dirty water to the temporary sediment trap. Once the area is stabilized, loam seeded, and we get some germination, this will be pulled out, and of course, the temporary sediment traps will be removed. Also, this is basin number 2. We have a little bit of our berm is in the upland review area. We tried our best to pull everything out of the upland review area, but there's a knoll here, a high point, and there's a knoll here, another high point. And we're kind of topographically, we're squashed in between these two knolls. So based on the amount of runoff that we had to attenuate in these basins, we were not able to pull this back any further because of the basin size that's required. One thing I will tell you about all these basins, they're infiltration basins. So we're promoting infiltration and groundwater recharge through the bottom. They're all 2 feet above existing groundwater. We use very conservative numbers on our infiltration out of these basins. And we also are treating 100% of the water quality volume through the sediment forebays here and here, and then in the bottom of the basin itself with the requirements of the stormwater quality manual for infiltration and groundwater recharging. So we meet all those parameters that are required by the stormwater manual. Again, here is another high point, and you'll see another temporary sediment trap. If you go to the next one, please. Oh, this puts us at the top. Let's go back. I think we're just at the town line here. So there is a low point here, and I imagine that is in Kent. That's why you don't see it. But nonetheless, there's a low point up here. That water's coming in through a temporary culvert. There's also the same perimeter controls around all of these basins, which is the sediment logs and the 6-foot wide berms. And then even within the basins, you'll see there's different straw wattles to prevent erosion, even within the sediment traps to kind of contain that. And you'll also see that within the swales, there's check dams. And what that does is that traps some of the sediment, and then the water overflows, it goes to the next one. The next one gives the contractor opportunities to remove the sediment that's behind the check dams. Okay, Bill. This is at the very top of the site. here, the high point, this is the town line right here. And from the high point, we're coming down towards the house site. And same thing here. Perimeter controls, temporary sediment trenches here. Then we move down for the stormwater basins. You can go ahead to the next one, Bill. So just below the house. Let's go back just to that one sheet, Bill, again, please. So you'll see a discharge pipe here. There's a low point in the driveway. There's a discharge pipe here, it comes down. That discharge pipe, which includes some storm drainage in front of the dwelling, is coming down to the basins below the house. And that pipe is right here. So that discharges into this detention basin number 5. And then we have basin number 6. The temporary sediment traps, tried to work with the site as best we could and work along the contours. Some of these sections are fairly steep, but we put our basins in the shallowest sloping areas. You know, notice how steep this area is above. So this is right at the toe slope. Again, here, many rows of perimeter controls to try to break up and trap sediment. There's a temporary swale in this area to convey dirty water into this sediment trap. And anything that comes from the road will be utilized in this sediment trap in this area. And of course, right above in the flat spot, this is the top of embankment right here. And we did our best to try to stay as far away from the top of embankment as possible. And we put our perimeter controls really tight to our grading and our outfall areas for each stormwater quality basin. Okay, Bill. This kind of gives you an idea, like an overview of where the basins are. So basin 1, basin 3, this is basin 5 and basin 6. As far as earthwork goes, we pretty much have a balanced site. We do need a net fill in Simsbury. It's like just under 500 cubic yards, but by the time we bring in construction materials such as process aggregate and stone and things like that, then we'll be pretty much a net fill. So we're right now, the raw data has the site as close to balance as we can get. Okay, Bill. So storm drainage wise, I know I went over a lot of it. I don't want to repeat too much. The biggest thing for us is, I already really talked about this. Let's go right up to the house area, Bill, so we can take a look at that. So you'll notice in the house area, it's kind of hard to see. I don't know if you could zoom in on that, Bill. Right here. Yeah. So what we've done is we've taken all the roof water from the every structure on site. And instead of dumping that water for the net increase into these above ground basins, we put that underground. These are in 4x4 precast concrete galleys, and they're raised up and filled with stone to keep them 24 inches minimum above the seasonal high groundwater table. That is pretty much that for every structure on the site, including the Simsbury barn, the house, everything is, all the roof goes underground. So it allows us to do 2 things. One, roof water can be sometimes construed as dirty water because of asphalt shingles and things like that. So by putting it underground, it allows us to give it some treatment, store the water underground. For everything that we've done on this site, we attenuate from the 1-year storm all the way up to the 100-year storm. That includes all the water for the roofs as well. And we placed all our emergency spillways, like you'll see here, in the areas that are as flat as possible so that we can mimic sheet flow once it leaves the basin in the event that the emergency spillway is needed. Majority of the storm events, 1, 2, 5, 10, 25, really 1 to 10 is the bulk of your most frequent storms. Those will infiltrate through the bottom of the basin. We don't really start discharging water out of multi-stage outlet structures until we get into the 25, 50, and 100-year storms. So, and then what we've done with a lot of these, especially this basin and the next basin over, you'll see a level spreader here. So what that allows us to do is, as the water gets discharged, it hits another structure here, a concrete structure, and there's a riprap level spreader that's kind of set up like a swale, and it forces the water to go out to the left and right, and then it slowly overflows a riprap berm, which is right on the low side of this spreader. And that puts us back to a sheet flow condition in a flat area before it hits the steeper slope. I think that pretty much concludes my presentation. Septic wise, there's a septic up here. It has to be a minimum of 50 some odd feet from our stormwater management systems. We did just today receive approval for suitability from the Farmington Valley Health District for all 3 structures for the septic systems. They will require engineered designs when we get into construction documents for the houses and stuff, but we did want to get that letter of suitability, which we did receive. I'm pretty sure they sent that to you, Brendan.
I haven't seen it yet.
You haven't seen it? Okay. I just received
The
it.
building.
Okay,
So quick question, like you covered how the road, the driveway was gonna work during construction, but done. And it's crowned, like you said, is there water management along the side of it as well? You talked about you're gonna pull out, some of the stuff you're putting in during construction, but there's gonna be water coming down that driveway also.
right.
Right.
So let's go back to the entrance bill, please. There you go. So if you could just zoom in on that area a little bit. So the swales will be maintained in place as permanent vegetative waterways.
Okay.
From the crown, we're promoting sheet flow down into the meadow area, and then of course, eventually through the woodlands. So this will be a vegetative waterway. So it'll have turf reinforced matting in the bottom of it. And then the sides will be stabilized with erosion control blankets. One of the requests, we're also, as you know, working in Canton. And in Canton, we get reviewed by the North Central Conservation District. And they requested that we use jute matting on all our erosion control blankets instead of your straw matting. Straw matting has a lot of plastic nylon netting in it. And I guess they have problems with wildlife, turtles, and snakes get caught in them and stuff like that. So they didn't want any of that. So everything on this site, except for extremely flat areas up behind the house, and the meadow, which is actually a pasture, which is in Canton, is going to be stabilized with jute matting. So like all these embankments here will have jute matting on it. In the bottom of the swale, we'll have turf reinforced matting. That's a permanent matting that stays in there. And then there'll be, we've done the erosion and sedimentation control in 2 phases. So you'll notice, if you could just zoom in, Bill, on this driveway right in here. You'll notice that there's some erosion control on here. So for instance, you see that IP, that's inlet protection. So because not everything was going to be constructed and final stabilization during the erosion and sedimentation control portion of this build out, we needed secondary erosion control measures, which are shown on the drainage and utility plans. So like this is a vegetative waterway here, there's inlet protection, and you'll see things that can just slide over a little bit, Bill. There you go. So you'll see things here like inlet protection, intermediate grade riprap underlaying with non-woven filter fabric. This is stuff you normally see on an erosion control plan, but because we're utilizing these trenches as erosion control BMP, we didn't want to show that and confuse people on the ENS plan. So we actually have a secondary ENS on the utility and drainage plans.
You said that you're sort of almost at like a net zero on the material needing to be brought in. But for some of the plantings, and stuff, you have to be bringing in any other topsoil for any of the areas, because you won't be, you know, the rocks and the.
Well, part of this, and it's not in Simsbury, but we do have a construction staging area that's in Canton. So we're looking at doing some screening of topsoil there and storage of different construction materials for instance, septic sand, common fill material, different size stone. There'll be like 1 1/4 inch stone utilized for all the underground systems. There'll be riprap utilized all over the site. So there'll be stockpiles of riprap. And then it's an area to store drainage structures such as catch basins, multi-stage outlet structures, storm drainage piping, and the like. So that is going to be where the Canton barn is located. You can actually show them on that overall plan, Bill.
Maybe at the top right of the property.
Yeah, you'll see it. Oh, we don't have it in this? Yeah,
But that's where you're gonna have your.
so, yeah. We can- So it's gonna be. You can go back to that color rendering, Bill, yeah. That one. So the Canton barn is out here at the loop. And that's where the construction staging area is. That's why you notice that you're not seeing loam stockpiles all over this site.
Right.
We didn't want to get into that. We wanted one area. So by the initial stripping of the forest litter and topsoil, we make the windrow of the embankment, which is on the high side of the trench, which is on the high side of the wood chip berm, backed by the sediment lot. So that allows us to keep that material close and use it as an embankment. And then have our roadway in a bit of a cut, which when it rains, water's just gonna kind of sit in there and it really can't get out. So once they start bringing the common fill in and bringing the grade of the driveway up in lifts, then at that point, they could start shaping the embankments and topsoiling and seeding and mulching with the jute mats.
Right. And this is like a kind of a side question, but are you, when you're doing the mulching and that kind of work, are you getting any more concerned about the jumping worm problem? You make some jumping worms that are going through the forest, are you thinking
I'm
about
not
that?
aware of jumping worms. Sorry.
So it's quite the problem, and it usually comes in through mulch and dirt. And it's really a problem for the forest, because when they destroy the soil, the plants will take over. And once you get them, it's really hard to get
Right.
rid of them. So I was just wondering.
Well, the nice thing I think about this site, and this may answer your question, the whole point of having the land clears do the stump grinding and chipping on this site is to use everything from this site.
Right,
So I don't really want them importing any wood chips at all.
right. And it usually comes in the plantings or soils is where it's coming in, or mulch.
Yeah,
So
you're talking about like bark mulch?
These little critters, like any kind of small mulch of any kind, like big mulch parts they won't like, but they just live in that top story. And then once they're in there, it's doing a number on all of our forests. So now you're going into a forest. So I would just, if you're thinking about this, just ask around. Most of the gardeners in Simsbury aren't even getting mulch anymore from places because.
Mike weigh in on that,
Yeah.
too, so he can talk about that. I know that's one of the things as far as we're not using a lot of straw mulch on this site, very limited. So there's an area up here, a flat spot by the house. There'll be some straw mulch here. Other than that, these are all gonna be jute mats. All through here is jute matting.
Yeah.
So that's gonna be a big help. We're not gonna have any mulch.
I think as long as you're aware that this will be going on and just think about it, then that's the best you can do.
Okay,
But you can look it up in any of the agricultural centers or any of the forest areas. They're all very worried about it.
right. Thank you for letting us know that. That concludes my presentation. I'll pass it back. Eric? Okay, thank you.
I want to walk you through the vernal pool analysis that we did. As I said, I'm a wildlife biologist and I've been practicing in Connecticut since 2000, so for 25 years. And the vernal pool analysis methodology that we use is this document here. I don't know if you're familiar with this. It's called Best Development Practices Conserving Pool Breeding Amphibians, Residential and Commercial Developments in the Northeastern United States. This methodology was developed in the early 2000s by the Metropolitan Conservation Alliance. A few years after it was developed, I worked for the Alliance for several years where we used this methodology for town-wide vernal pool surveys and assessments. We did a number of them in New York, but we also did it for Barkhamsted and Ridgefield and some other areas. So I'm intimately familiar with this methodology. So let me just walk you through what we found. Bill, you want to just go to the vernal pool map, figure 3? So this is a complicated map. You can zoom in a little, Bill, on the pools. So let me just walk you through. You can ignore the tables for now, but because we didn't have an actual spring vernal pool survey, because our work started later in the season, September, October. What we did was we went into the interior of Wetland 1, and we basically mapped any areas that had hydrology suitable to support amphibian breeding. So essentially any part of the wetland that didn't have a slope to it and had some basin characteristics to it, in other words, some ability to hold even several inches of water. We mapped those, and that's what you see here on this map here in blue, where the labels vernal pool 1, or excuse me, PVP, which is potential vernal pool 1 and potential vernal pool 2 are shown. So this is really a conservative approach in the sense that if we were actually to go out and map breeding, as you can see, some of these areas are really large. They generally don't play out in that extent. So because we didn't have spring data to show actual breeding sites, we took a conservative approach and basically just mapped anything that showed a seasonally flooded hydrology signature. So those are the pool basins that we've mapped. There's nothing in vernal pool 2. It's all, as I mentioned, it's a dug wetland that occurs on a slope. So the water discharges and sheet flows, and it does not have any standing water for any period of time. So for PVP1 and PVP2, what we did was we applied this landscape analysis, which is basically the main aspect of this assessment methodology. And what it is you look at 2 zones around the vernal pool, the zone from the edge of the pool out to 100 feet. And that's what's labeled here in this little blue circle called the VPE. See that little label there, 100-foot VPE. That's the 100-foot zone around the pool. And then the second zone that we analyze is this 100 to 750-foot zone, which is this big circle here. So basically, we're looking at all of the land cover from the edge of the vernal pool out to 750 feet. And we basically run the calculations of forest cover before and forest cover after. And so the primary guidelines are from the 0 to 100-foot zone, you want no development of any kind. And from the 100 to 750-foot zone, you don't want to exceed 25% developed landscape in that zone. So we ran that analysis, and that's what this figure 3 is. And all of the calculations are shown in the tables on the left-hand side, but I'll just summarize for you. This development meets the guidelines. Vernal pool 1, for vernal pool 1, which is the larger northern pool. Again, we have no activity in the 100-foot zone for either of the pools. So in reference to the 100 to 750-foot zone, the post-development numbers for vernal pool 2 are 82% forested, 8% cleared but revegetated, as Mike discussed the revegetation plan. So it's 8% cleared but revegetated, and then just 5% will actually be developed impervious, which in this case is essentially just the road or the drive, the access drive. And just for reference, the colors that correspond to that is in red is the limits of clearing. The purple indicates the stormwater basins. But the key things to look at here are the red, which is limits of clearing again. And then this yellow outline is anything that's impervious. So essentially just the access drive. So that's vernal pool 1. So again, the goal would be 75% or more forest cover post development. We're at 82% forest cover. And for vernal pool 2, we're at 76% forest cover and 13% it falls into that developed cleared category. So but again, that's all going to be revegetated. So again, this analysis, we took a conservative approach as well, because the assessment methodology does allow for, if you have cleared forest, if it's going to be revegetated and naturalized, in other words, not lawn, that actually counts towards undeveloped land. But I broke those categories out so you could understand what the change is. So we're meeting the guidelines simply with the forest cover, but if we were going strictly by the assessment methodology for vernal pool 1, the 8% cleared but revegetated, and the 13% for vernal pool 2 cleared, revegetated, would also technically qualify as undeveloped land. So again, we're meeting the guidelines for forest cover, and we also have a pretty good percentage of revegetated areas. And essentially those are going to be the roadsides and the stormwater basins. As you heard from Mike, there's a very robust replanting plan for all of the edges of the driveway and the stormwater basins. I mean, those are essentially going to be meadows. In the maintenance plan, we're proposing that those areas, the mowing and maintenance of those is seasonal, but after the amphibian and reptile activity period. So after October, essentially, so that, mowers aren't cutting and impacting animals that could be using those basins or basin edges as habitat. So those will essentially function as meadows. So we meet the guidelines of the assessment methodology. So in my eyes, whether we had done the actual spring surveys or not, we would land in the same position we're at now. And that is, do we comply or don't we? And we do. There are a number of secondary recommendations in the guidelines that we also comply with, and I discuss them in a little bit more detail in my report, but I'll just hit some of the highlights. The guidelines expressly indicate that you shouldn't build roads within the 750-foot zone that exceed 5 to 10 cars per hour traffic. So essentially, these would be new public roads. In this case, it's a driveway that doesn't come close to meeting that traffic level. So we're not going to put a high traffic road in the management zone. We don't have any lighting that's directed at the vernal pools, because lighting can impact, if it's on all night, can impact nighttime breeding activities for amphibians. We made sure to modify some of the construction, erosion and sedimentation controls to better comply with the intent of the guidelines, which is essentially to let animals move through the construction zone where appropriate and to exclude them where not appropriate. For instance, high intensity construction zones like the basin, we will exclude them from, but the road that is south of vernal pool 2, as Tom mentioned, that's going to be mostly secured with wood chip berms and silt socks, which will allow animals to move south and be able to get away from the pool and back into the forest. And then I think to me, the critical component is one of the issues we have with new developments is you build a stormwater pond or a stormwater basin that has a hydrology that can mimic a vernal pool hydrology. And if it's located in the upland habitat that amphibians use during the non-breeding season, when they emerge to breed, they can sometimes find stormwater basins and use those as breeding sites. It's something we call a decoy vernal pool. And the issue with that is long-term, those are generally not productive habitats, because they can get high pollutant loads, high sediment loads, and and not have the same hydrology that a natural wetland does. In this case, all of the stormwater basins have been designed as infiltration basins to shed that water within days. So there's no long-term ponding, nothing that can attract an amphibian to lay its eggs, think that it's in a vernal pool when in fact it's in a stormwater basin. So no decoy vernal pool issues with the stormwater basins. I also just wanted to hit on a couple things that Mike talked about, but just to reiterate, I think the key with this project is it's a sizable project for a single residence, because it includes, agricultural aspects and outbuildings and all, and of course, the very long driveway. But what we managed to avoid direct impacts. So everything that we looked at in terms of our impact analysis was all about secondary impacts. In this case, as you heard, it's under an acre of upland review area activity. I think it's 0.8 total, 35,000 square feet of actual upland review area activity. And a portion of that is incorporating that 200-foot upland review area around wetland 2, which, as you heard, is not real. There's no real conversion of habitat there. Excuse me, there's just conversion of habitat, but no real large scale grading, grubbing, or alteration of the ground. It's just going to be, view shed creation there essentially. The last thing that's in my report, I won't go into detail, but can answer questions if you have them, is we did do an NDDB screening in anticipation of the fact that we will need a construction stormwater general permit from DEEP, and we'll have to go through you're familiar with the NDDB, the National Diversity Database. So we did the screening, it came back with box turtle, and we did prepare a box turtle protection plan that is in compliance with what DEEP typically expects. But I included all that information in the report. The plan is in there. And our intent is when we file for the construction permit, we're going to file that plan and with the hopes of getting compliance from DEEP on proceeding with that plan. It's for a pretty standard plan that I submit. This is probably the 7th or 8th one I've done this year, and have not had any pushback. It's usually pretty straightforward process. So that is in my report as well. I think that was everything I wanted to touch on. If you have any questions, happy to answer them.
In just at super high level, I'll put the box turtle plan in.
Yeah, so the intent of the plan is to the primary goal of the plan is to prevent mortality of turtles during construction. It doesn't account for habitat loss, and I mentioned that in the report. And that's stating the obvious. We're obviously taking some land that is now natural forested habitat that box turtles could live in and converting it to developed areas. So there is habitat loss as you'd expect with any project. So the primary goal of the plan is to, again, prevent mortality of adult turtles, because in this case, we're not taking an undeveloped site and converting it to developed with no remaining habitat. There is going to be ample habitat for box turtles on this site. So again, the goal is to not during construction run over turtles with machinery, essentially, to put it simply. So what we do is when they emerge from hibernation in April, we basically use the erosion sedimentation control plan as an isolation barrier. We do pre-construction sweeps, what we call sweeps, which are basically searches through the construction zone just prior to construction. And as the clearing is occurring, that's kind of the critical time. As the machines come in and start cutting and clearing forest, that is the best time to find turtles and prevent the potential for mortality or turtles being crushed. And we do that as the clearing is occurring. And then again, we use the erosion sedimentation control measures as barriers to keep the turtles out. So if we find a turtle, we move it out of the construction zone. We modify the erosion sedimentation control measures as needed. If we repeatedly find turtles in a certain area or moving in and out of an area, we continue to do that intensively as the site's being cleared. Once it's opened up and the erosion control measures are in, then generally the turtles avoid those areas because there's, equipment and noise and it's denuded of vegetation. But we do find them, if we do find them coming into the construction zone, it's usually because they're trying to get through it because it bifurcated an area that they traveled before it was developed. In that case, again, what we do is move the turtles out and then we modify the erosion controls. And usually, basically what we try to do is put in a more permanent barrier or something like a silt fence that will exclude them completely from that area until construction's done. Once construction's done, once everything's revegetated, then, again, they can go about their activity and there'll be additional, really successional habitat on the site that doesn't occur there now.
What's the time scale for the whole construction of like the main driveway and all the stuff before the house? Is that measured in months, years?
I think that we're probably not gonna start construction until late spring. One, because of the box turtles. Two, because it's a glacial till site, so it can be wet in the spring, so probably sometime in May. And the hope would it to be to have the driveway completed within about 8 to 12 weeks, at least up to the house area.
Okay.
Stabilized,
Okay, 3 months.
yeah, 2 to 3 months, probably.
Well, that's not bad, but that would work.
Yeah,
Mhm.
it's gonna have to be a large construction. It's probably somebody that can get the work done in
And,
fairly quick.
and do the turtle sweeps.
Do it.
Pure fascination. How long is the driveway, start to finish?
Just under a mile, right?
Okay.
Yeah, and that includes the 2 branches that go to the Simsbury barn, so.
I had written down 9 questions, I think, and they all got answered. It's very comprehensive. Understood.
Very thorough.
Thank you for the very thorough presentation.
Yeah. That's a good question.
But just make 2 potential motions in front of you.
Joe likes to read, so.
Well, it's definitely a regulated activity. The question is,
Right.
because of the size of the disturbance. It's over 5 acres, so that would typically make it significant.
Right, focus on also the upland review area
Yeah.
disturbance as well. So
Right.
that's- okay.
With the upland view area where it's impacting, it's less than an acre though, right, am I correct? So out of all of that construction, it's 0.8, of an acre, right?
Yeah, the actual impact of the upland review area,
Yeah,
quite small. The project is,
yeah, the project's immense, I'm not,
Yeah.
not arguing that.
what we look at is actually pretty small.
Right, I think the question is, given. It's more a question of what we've done in the past, precedents compared to what we've done in the past. And that's why I was zeroing in on just the scope of the overall project.
Right.
At least in my tenure, I can't remember having such a large overall project with such a small footprint in the upland review.
Right.
area.
Yeah.
So, I mean, it's kind of unique.
Yeah, I would say it is unique in that way, and also and it's clearly a major engineering project with a lot of work has gone into it. So it makes it, I guess one of my issues is that I think it's all well done, but I think it's hard to say it's a non-significant activity when you have that much engineering going into it. I do agree that the amount that's actually being disturbed in the upper review area is less than 5 acres.
I mean, I think it's, a lot of the engineering was to keep it out of the upland review area too.
Right, absolutely.
Very appreciated.
No, it's a well thought out project. It's not. It's just a matter. It's a matter of what we would normally do for something this large with this much engineering.
Well, I mean, it's a question of considering the scope of the project or our what we adjudicate, which is the impact on the wetland area, and how much of that total project impacts the wetland area, though, you know? I mean, what is our, I guess, what is our job here to? I mean, there's parts of this project that, yeah, was a lot of engineering, but it doesn't impact a wetland anyway. It's not within 100-foot review, you know, upland review. I mean, it's gonna have an impact, sure. You know, maybe cutting down trees and paving and doing all that. But I think our area of responsibility, like Jason was saying, is pretty well defined. What do we think within that 0.8 of an acre, how much of an impact this is gonna have?
Well, I think the only question, the only question between these two motions is there a public hearing on one or not? I mean, we're gonna go through and adjudicate it.
Right. I mean, if, let's say we voted for a public hearing, we're gonna be talking about less than an acre.
Right, and
You know.
and
this is also far removed from, you know, I mean, that's a pretty not that populated of an area.
well, but it's also at the top. It's also at the top of the water chain.
You know,
So the impact going downhill, and of course, I think one of the answers is if you have a public hearing and, you know, people ask some questions, you answer it, you've had a public hearing, you've answered it, which gives a lot of cover if there's anything that ever does come up. It's a, you know, I don't know, my feeling is, you know, I could go either way on this, but my feeling is it is a big project. It's a hard time to say it's not, you know, I have a hard time saying it's not a significant project. And if it was down, if it wasn't at the top of the whole water chain system, you might be able to make a better case for it. You guys,
And you guys said you weren't gonna start until late spring. So if we did do a public hearing and it pushed it out one extra meeting, it's not gonna impede anything. I mean, I can see the public hearing, like just erring on the extreme side of caution.
right,
Again, I really don't think the impact to the upland review area is significant. But valid point on top of the water chain.
but so let's take another run at it. The problem we're gonna have is, you're thinking is just in terms of scheduling the public hearing.
Yeah. Just trying to be cognizant.
So if this were a 2 acre lot and we were disturbing 8/10, would that change anybody's feeling on it?
That would be disturbing nearly half the lot. I would say that would be a pretty significant. But in the grand scheme of this size lot.
Yeah, so the 100 acre one.
It's pretty insignificant disturbance.
And also it's a harder, I don't think that's a great comparison because, you know, how much. It's part of the whole engineering thing, the stage part, it's gonna be, you know, it's a 3 or 4 month piece of activity with a big construction firm doing it, you know, it's gonna be a lot of work. 2 acre wouldn't be anything like this.
So I was feeling one way, now I'm feeling another way. It's a large scale project, even though there's very minimal impact that I can see. The plan is very well thought out.
Right.
It would. It would serve us well to allow the public to see that as well. You know, if we just move past it. Without allowing people to comment or ask questions. And I don't know how that would go over.
Well, I give the interested people an opportunity. A lot of times we'll have a public hearing on something that's very specialized like
Yeah.
this, and nobody comes.
Yeah, I can see that happening
Yeah,
too.
which is fine.
Yeah,
And in the end, you know, it's a commentary on the engineering that's going on. And, you know, what is actually within our purview, but you are giving people a chance to, you
yeah,
know, to.
we should probably give that opportunity.
I mean, that's always my thought.
You make a good point too, that it's at the very top of the flows of waters and tributes down.
That's
So
kind of
it's-
the sticking point I have to
Yeah.
make it a significant is because it is at the top of the water flows.
So remember, you do have that option of making it non-significant, but in the public interest, so
Oh,
having that
right.
public hearing. While it's a non-significant project,
for the public interest.
so it'd be a public hearing for the public interest.
And that's because once you make a clarification that's significant, a couple other things happen.
Right.
Okay, so yeah, that's the third option. I'm good with that one.
Yeah, that
That's-
kind of
that's-
splits the
Okay,
difference.
how do
I
we-
think.
More on that.
How do we improve that?
I could do it. It's
I think that's kind of the happy medium.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
Kind of
yeah,
checks
yeah.
all the
No,
boxes
and I've
of that.
forgotten that being a significant activity opened up a couple other pieces. So we can definitely have the public hearing, the public interest. That's not, we don't think it's a significant activity because it's only disturbing less than an acre of the upper review area.
Okay, set it up.
Yeah. Are we good for a motion at this point?
I'm good.
You're running it.
Yep, I'm good for a motion.
Okay,
Entertain it.
so I will move that the Inland Wetlands and Watercourse Agency determines that application CC 25-29. Of Michael Keegan applicant on Westledge Lot 3. Will. It is a regular activity, but it's not significant, but that we should have a public hearing in the public interest. And it should be, and that the public, and that will be scheduled for December 2nd.
Right,
That gives us enough time to notice it.
yes,
Okay.
December 2nd, 2025 at 7 p.m. In the main meeting rooftop.
Second,
Do we have any further discussion? Seeing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
I'm gonna abstain. I abstain.
Okay. Okay,
Thank you.
Thank you, guys. Thank you for the great presentation.
Will it be in the same spot?
it will be downstairs.
Oh, downstairs.
Yep.
Okay, moving on, public hearing and or action on applications, we have none. On designated agent actions.
We have 3 designated agent actions. First one is CC number 25-26. It is at 3045 Library Lane. Installation of 1 new concrete deck pier approximately 40 feet from the wetland soils. And has to be measured as noted. Second one is 130 West Street, the installation of a generator and propane tank with the trench connecting the two. Approximately 76 feet from the wetland soils. The last one is 3 Clover Lane, a similar project, digging of a trench between the home and the generator. Approximately 25 feet from wetland soils. And that is all I have
Thank you.
for DA purpose.
On other conservation mission business approval of the 2026 regular meeting calendar. Anybody have any objections, changes, comments?
If it's pretty similar to last year's, or sorry, this year's. There was one library schedule, we guess the budget at Board of Ed.
No, I move we accept the draft calendar for 2026. Second.
Any discussion, all in favor? Aye. And that concludes our business.
Yes.
And a motion to adjourn,
Motion adjourned.
Second.
all in favor? Aye. Thank you, everyone.
For over 40 years, SCM has been the voice of our town.
Bringing us together through local programming,
Education and live broadcasts.
SEM isn't just about television.
It's about empowering our community.
Ensuring our voices are heard during government meetings. And celebrating milestones.
like our high school graduations.
But today, SEM faces a challenge.
Our funding structure is based on television subscriptions. And it's no secret, people have been cutting the cord.
With a shift to internet-only subscriptions,
SCM receives less revenue.
Even though all our programming is freely available online.
We need your support.
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 Your donation can make a difference.
It will ensure that SCM remains open.
Continues to educate our youth
And keeps our community informed.
Thanks to SEM, I've been honing my creative skills, helping me work towards my college degree.
SCM is crucial for keeping our community connected.
SCM isn't just here to broadcast local events. They're actually preserving Simsbury's history.
Join us in preserving Simsbury's voice.
Simsbury's voice.
Together we can ensure that SCM continues to thrive.
for generations to come.
Visit our website.
Or scan the QR code on your screen to make your donation.
Every contribution
Counts.
Thank you for supporting Simsbury Community Media.
where your town
Your schools and
And your government come together.